Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Cynthia Marsh. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, everybody.
Well, Cynthia, I am very, very, very honored to have Cynthia on this call. I have I have three of her pieces of art hanging in this room, and if I could have figured out a way to put one back there, I would have. but I enjoy your work so much, and it's added so much to the ambiance in my house and the energy that it's casting down to help me do all my stuff. So for those of you that don't know Cynthia, she's a lifelong artist. She's a muralist, which I don't think in this presentation we're going to get to see the murals, but they're amazing. She's an educator, a forensic artist, which we are going to talk about today. She's an ET experiencer, and she's a community organizer. So Cynthia, why don't you, for the people that don't know you, could you share a little bit about your journey so that they get to understand how you came into all these incredible genius skills?
Oh, thanks, Kathy. And thank you for having me. I love your show so much. And anyway, I moved to Colorado in 2010, and in 2012, I started to really pray about how can I be in service to others. I'm an artist. I've been working as an artist forever, and just was doing a lot of portrait work actually at the time. And I was feeling like, how can I do portraits that have some sort of meaning to them instead of just doing commissions? Not that that's not meaningful, and I got calling to become a forensic artist, to work with the police, to work with victims and witnesses, and went and I got trained, and it was sort of remarkable because I'm a civilian. I never became an officer or detective or anything like that. I never was hired to become a police officer. I was a civilian, and I just put the word out in local law enforcement that I was available. I was pretty naive at the time as to really what it involved. But I got a call from Denver PD, and one of the biggest departments there in Colorado, and began working as a forensic artist, and I was very honored to have that whole experience of working with detectives, amazing people that are there to help victims and help find solutions to, these crimes and identify people that are unidentified. And it just really took off. I started to work for the FBI and a lot of different departments up and down the Front Range would call me and bring me in to work on their cases. So at the same time that I embarked on that, I began having some dreams that were unrelated to the forensic work. And the dreams were these strange symbols that were coming in my dreams. And there were just thousands of them, like a slideshow. And I got the sense when I had the dreams that they were very important. And I also got the sense that they had some sort of a connection to the UFO experiences that I've had throughout my life, which I'm going to talk about one of them today. But so I kind of ironically, I'm now in this field where I'm documenting people's memories, and I'm having these pretty remarkable dreams, but the dreams were coming in at times over the course of about 4 years that were unpredictable to me. So all of a sudden I'd be in that dream, and then I wouldn't have the dream again for another month or 2 months. So I was not documenting those dreams, even though I was documenting the memories of other people and helping to work with the police to help solve some crimes. So it was when COVID happened and my work for the law enforcement stopped because people were on lockdown and not going out, and crimes slowed down, that I really was getting the inner direction that I needed to begin documenting these symbols and sort of somehow incorporating them in the art that I do, the painting that I do. So, yes, go ahead.
Well, I've been around you when you've brought this stuff through, or when you remembered. And one aspect, I mean, what's interesting is that there's something about your field that helps others remember. That's why I imagine the work that you do to help people go through a traumatic experience and be able to think clearly. That field that you create helps others remember their stuff. Because I know when that one bigger piece that I got, I saw what you were going to do before you did it in kind of a dreamlike state. So,
Wow,
so
that's really neat.
I think you have something innate in the field that you carry that allows people to release the fear of their experience enough to get clarity so that their soul can do the clearing. Because what you're doing is you're really helping people solidify what happened, not release the fear, and then process it. So something can be done.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing to be a sensitive sort of empath and be put in a situation where you're working with a victim of a violent crime.
I don't think I could do it.
It was, and then there's just so many different aspects and so many different hats that I would have to step in to wear, whereas I had to not get emotional, not tune into the emotion of this person, and lead the interview in a timely manner. I had detectives or deputies waiting for the sketch to put that out on the news. It was time critical. So I had a time element. Then I also had to be sensitive to the person if they were in a state of pain, and be a comfort to them, and help them to continue on with the interview. I had to make sure that they were warm, that they were not hungry, that they were comfortable, because in a situation where you're going into trauma, if your bodily needs are, if you're feeling freezing cold and hungry, you're not going to want to stay there in this police department for 4 hours talking to some stranger about what just happened to you. So just a lot of different hats. And I think the hardest thing for me was to show up, be listening, and be a support, and make these people feel like that they can trust me and be feeling comfortable around me, but also for me to be professional in collecting the information, getting to the deeper memories that they might be holding, and documenting all of that. So it's just it's very interesting. And then the other part of it is, as an artist, a lot of times most of the times, I would say, as an artist, you set out to do a painting or a drawing of something that you have in your mind that you're going to do, a landscape or whatever it might be. And in this case, I'm showing up to do drawings of people's memories that have nothing to do with me. I'm a tool. I'm just the person that's documenting, listening and documenting, and working with somebody else to be their tool, really, to document their memories. So you have to put ego aside. You might be doing a sketch that you feel like, oh, this looks really weird, but it's not my memory. I'm documenting it, somebody else's. So I have to just trust that.
Well, you have to have created a field of trust with them where they're able to go into that scene, which it's like a play, and there's a scene in their life that they probably have a lot of discomfort with, that you're helping them freeze a frame of it so that they can do it.
Yeah.
And I can understand how this works for UFO work, experiencer work, as well as police work, because so much of the trauma, near-death experiencers, I mean, you can think of so many different ways that people have to process, and they really don't have a way to integrate that viewpoint until you make it real, almost.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a huge service, Cynthia.
Oh, thank
What you do.
Yeah, I feel honored. Yeah, I definitely feel honored to be able to help people document whatever memory it is to help them. And it's true. You brought up near-death experiencers or experiencers in general, UFO experiencers, and I think that what happens is that when people face their fear and they're able to, whether be it a UFO experience or be it they're a victim of a crime, when they face the fear of whatever happened to them, and then they really slow down time and they analyze their memory and document features or whatever it is that we're drawing, whatever it is that we're capturing in that moment of their memory. The end result, especially in the case where we're trying to identify somebody, and then somebody is identified by having done that process, the end result is that the person becomes empowered. The person a lot of times has additional memory that is locked, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the little presentation that I have to show you. But it can be very beneficial. It can rip Band-Aids off of wounds as well, having to revisit that. But as we all know with trauma, sometimes you really need to go into that trauma in order to look at it and release it and feel empowered by whatever happened.
And to have someone that's nurturing and that's compassionate, to hold your hand, to hold space for you, that doesn't make you wrong. I mean, because there's so much inner judgment and confusion, almost like when you're a 2-year-old, did I cause this, and did I make a bad decision, and all of that you're already beating yourself up. So it's a real art that you can hold space, Cynthia. And I what I was trying to say earlier, I hope it came through. I feel like you have a field around you that is almost like a portal for other people to remember without fear, other things that have come through the veil for them that may be a higher lesson. So there's a lot of healing that comes through.
Well, as strange, thank you for saying that. As strange as that sounds, to some people, I've had interviews with individuals in police departments, young people that have witnessed this one young man who witnessed his friend being murdered in front of him. And it was very heavy, very intense. And as a little bit of an aside, of course, I can't go into an emotional state in the moment, but I do absorb that. And that's something that then I have to process over the next few days. But there are times when I feel like the room is full of the guides of the people that I'm interviewing. There's a lot of help that I feel spiritually that ends up coming and happening. And I don't necessarily talk about it with the person that I'm interviewing, but I do feel I am prayerful a lot of times on the way to doing these interviews to help me, to help them.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't know that I could do what you do. I mean, I can help people with seeing some of their soul work and their healings, but what you do, holding space like that and actually doing a process with them that really is life changing. is something I just tip my hat to you. Do you want to show? We might as well start your presentation now so that people can get more of a feel for
Sure.
what we're talking about and get more clarity. Is that okay if I add it
Yeah,
to?
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right. So I'm just going to, please feel free to go ahead and say something if you have a question about anything, but I'm just going to begin and talk a little bit about what I have to show you all. So as I mentioned, in 2012, I got a calling to become a forensic artist, and it just sent me down this road of getting trained. And I was involved with the Colorado homicide investigators, where I did my very first talk. I was asked to do a lot of forensic art talk. I'm sorry, we'll go back to a lot of different law enforcement organizations. Just law enforcement has trainings, and they are always interested in having different people come in and talk to them about different topics. And so when I made my presence known and began to work for Denver PD, I started to get invitations and have done a lot of public speaking for law enforcement, also in a lot of different, the Denver Museum of Art, a lot of different organizations have asked me to speak about it. It's sort of it's an interesting thing. I think TV has us all feeling like it's a very romanticized thing, and it's very quick. You just go in, you do a sketch, and it's not like that. It's not quick like that. There's a whole procedure, but yeah, it is a fascinating thing. What I'm going to talk about, there are 4 categories of forensic art, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to talk today about the one category that I do a lot of, which is composite imagery. And these are graphic images that are assembled with the assistance of a witness, which I will show you a little bit more of. And below on the screen, it has a list of some of the benefits of doing a composite. One of the most interesting things that I came to understand about it, especially with cold cases, is that if a composite sketch is done when there's a cold case, it will show the court that there's forward motion into trying to identify the unidentified person in a cold case, and it can reopen a case. So that's really beneficial. So as I said, composite imagery are done with graphic images assembled with the assistance of a witness. And there's something called the cognitive interview that is vital for collection of that information. And this is an example of a composite sketch that I did with a young woman. And to the right is the mugshot of the individual that was identified. So I can only draw what the witness or the victim is describing to me. It's what I draw is dependent upon the person's memory. In some cases, like this one, that person's memory was spot on. It was amazing. And then she had the ability to actually explain and describe and work with me to get it as close as it came in this case. So the important thing about the cognitive interview, so if I was going to do a sketch with somebody, be it for law enforcement or even for, somebody that had a near-death experience or had a UFO sighting or had an abduction experience, there's the interview process is very important because it accesses memory, and a lot of times memory that we aren't aware that we have. And those are all important points. So memory is, you can think about memory, especially with a traumatic event. So memory, if you think of a puzzle that's all put together perfectly, and you throw the puzzle up in the air and the puzzle pieces all fall down, and some of the pieces are facing up and some of the pieces are facing down and some are underneath other pieces. So sometimes there's an important piece of memory that is underneath another piece of memory. And so that's why at the beginning of the interview that I do with people, I tell them, tell me everything that you remember. And we usually start from before the event, leading into the event. Tell me everything that you remember, even if it seems unimportant, even if it seems like something that's not related to what actually happened. Because sometimes, one of the examples I give, there can be a dog that ran across the road and a car that slowed down not to hit the car, and you notice the license plate on the car, but you don't remember that license plate number until you remember the dog running across the road, which didn't seem like an important tidbit of information. So there's two different kinds of memory. There's one is called recall and one is called recognition. So recall is thinking about what happened. Recall would be if you were to tell me what your father's nose looks like. And we all would think, oh yeah, of course I know what my dad's nose looks like. And then you would recall it. But if you're thinking now, can you describe to me what your father's nose looks like? That might be a little bit of a challenge for some of us. Of course, we know our fathers, right, for the most part. Recognition is if you saw a picture of your father and you would recognize his nose. That's a stronger form of memory. So in the cognitive interview, we first talk to the person. We get them to tell every detail of what they remember. I get them to zero in on the moment they saw the face of the person or whatever it is that we're trying to draw, and describe every aspect of that. And a lot of times we will think, of course I remember what this person looked like, but until we get down to exactly what kind of eyes, what's the distance between the eyes, how wide was the nose, did they have facial feature? Did they have facial hair? No facial hair, and so on. If the person, and we document all of that, I write all of that down, and then I direct the person to look at different facial features to recognize, yes, it was like these eyes, but they were a little further apart. Their eyebrows were bushier or the thinner. There's a lot of details to a face that, unless you're drawing one, we just take that for granted. So that's another form of collection that I do, is what were the individual facial features that seemed the most familiar to the person. And that's important if this ever goes to court, whereas I would be questioned, how did you come about with this sketch? I could then say, well, the victim, these were the eyes, these were the nose, these were the ears, this was the facial hair. It's a way that I can explain exactly how the composite was put together, if that makes sense. Sometimes, in this case, I had a victim. I was called in to do a sketch at night. This was somebody that had a violent crime happen to her. And the detective felt that I would be able to work with her, and he set me up with her, and then he left to go home, and there was nobody else in the department. And I sat down with her, and the first question that a forensic artist would ask is, if you saw this person, would you recognize them? And if they say yes, then a composite sketch can be done. If you say, tell me what you remember, and they say, I don't remember anything, then a composite sketch can't be done, because if we're starting with no memory at all, then I'm not drawing my fabrication of what happened, I'm drawing their memory. So in this case, that's what she said. She said, I don't remember anything. And normally I would go to the detective and say, I don't think I could do the sketch, but I was alone and I had to make something work. So I remembered in training that sometimes you can get to memory by going backwards in time instead of going forward in time. So with her, I said, okay, I went through all of the other prompts, and finally I said, all right, well, let's go to the last thing that you remember. and she remembered arriving home. And then I said, let's go to the next to last thing that you remember. And as soon as she allowed herself that, to go backwards in time, she was able to access the entire event that happened. And we got this incredibly detailed sketch down to the bandana, and the design was very specific, and the way it was folded. That was a very late night, but very satisfying. This is just an example of, again, there's mugshot and sketch comparison, and that the person's memory was this person was screaming at them, so I had to draw that expression, which was challenging. But there was a positive identification, which was great. Again, another comparison. So my point in showing you these is that we all have seen pictures of aliens and all of that kind of stuff, and probably a lot of us question, oh, maybe it's just whatever, maybe it's not really real, maybe it's just from the movies and they're just imagining things. But from my work for 12 or 13 years with law enforcement, I can see that I can also see when people are not necessarily telling the truth, but I can see that this can work. Accessing memory in this way can actually be pretty accurate. And again, this is an example that I showed at the beginning. So actually, I can't even read what I wrote on here. Okay, yes. So this is I'm going to move forward to show you some examples of some NDEs, some abductions, and a case study that I did with somebody that had a pretty close encounter and an abduction, probably. This was an interview that I did with somebody. This was an incomplete sketch that I did, but this was somebody that had an NDE and had what he believed to be an interaction and experience with Jesus. And so he described a very luminous being. He said this sketch, he said, looked exactly like what he remembered. So this was an interview I did with a woman who had a memory, a conscious memory. This was not a memory that she had to go through hypnotism to get. This was a conscious memory that she had throughout her life from when this event occurred. And this was an extreme event that happened where she was abducted, and she was remembered consciously being taken on a craft, put on a table, and she raised her kids. She's got adult children. They all remember mom always talking about her UFO experiences. Well, she finally agreed to sit down with me and document this. And one of the things that happens where you know that we've gotten really close to documenting memory is when you get to the point where when I'm pretty much done with the sketch from what the person has described, work with them back and forth to get it right. And then I get them back into their memory of that event that happened, and then show them the sketch so that they can compare their memory to the sketch and direct me as to how to make it better. If that person sees the sketch in that moment and there's a real emotional impact, if they get very upset by it, for example, I know that I've really been able to hear them, work with them, listen to them, and document what they remember. It doesn't tell me for sure whether it actually happened, but in this case, I believe this woman gave me no reason to believe that it was fabricated. And she did have a very powerful emotional response to this, and really didn't want to ever talk about it again after this. She does. I haven't spoken to her since we did this sketch, but I was grateful that she was willing to sit with me. This is a case study that I wanted to share. This is a person named Darren Moon, and I met him in Colorado, and he had described to me some encounters that he had when he was a kid. And I was very intrigued. They were very detailed. There was his first major encounter that he had was with his family. It occurred in Texas. His father ended up writing a very detailed account of it. And then this study this forensic case that I documented that I'm going to talk to you about right now happened, I think, 6 months after the first event that happened with the multiple family members. This happened alone. He was 14. It was nighttime. It was in the spring of 1983 in Houston, Texas. And he was sleeping and in his room, and it was very hot, and he had a headache, and he was sort of praying for this headache to go away. And it was super hot and humid there in Texas that night. And this breeze came in through his window and circled around his room. And with the breeze, it circled around his head and went back out the window, and his headache went with the breeze out the window. And he thought, wow, thank you, because he had been praying, please, God, take this headache away. So he decided to look out the window. And when he looked out the window, he saw a craft across the street. Now, he lived in a suburban neighborhood. It wasn't remote, but there was a craft basically parked on the road at the end of his driveway with beings outside of the craft. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this interview. So initially, I sat down with him, and he told me his whole story. And we did an initial drawing of this one being that actually came from the craft to his window. He was looking out the window, came to his window, looked at him face to face, and somehow was able to lift him out of his body and bring him out of his room. And his conscious memory was of being brought around the neighborhood or brought around the area around his house and then brought back to his room. There might be more that happened to him, and that would be something interesting to explore. So this is a photograph taken from his bedroom window, looking out in the direction in the neighborhood of where this craft was. This whole project of documenting his memories here took quite a while, because he no longer lived in Texas. So he had to have a friend, or I think it was maybe a cousin or some sort of family member that still lived in Texas, go to this neighborhood and take a photograph at this house that the family no longer lived in or owned, from the position of that window that was his bedroom window, to get this angle and view. I wanted to really understand the scope, the area, and the dimensions, as you'll see. So what we did then was, looking at this photograph, I worked with Darren, and I had him mark out on the photograph, according to his memory, the approximate dimensions of this ship that was at the end of his driveway. And then worked with him in exactly what this ship looked like. There were landing gear, and there was some sort of a ramp that was there. And he described all of it, the ship, the beings, as having a green hue and glowing green. So here I've darkened the image so that you get the idea of the contrast of night, and began to place in the ship and the beings. So this is a depiction of what he witnessed looking out his window that night. There was a group of beings, about 5 or 6 beings, that were standing outside the craft, and there was one that was approaching his house. And that being, he remembered there was some sort of an insignia. He was a young boy at the time, but they appeared to be very tall, so 6 foot or taller, very athletic looking like they had a green bodysuit on. They all were dressed the same, and they all had a green glow around them. And there was some sort of an insignia that was similar to what he remembered on the right side of the chest of their what they were wearing. This being then came, as I said, came up to his window, was looking straight on, eye to eye with him. And he did not have a sense, he didn't tell me that he had a sense of fear. It was a sense, from what I remember, of just having this experience, being shown, being taken out of his body somehow. And I asked him recently, what was the benefit of having done this composite with me? And was there anything negative, positive? And he told me that it helped him to access more memories about the event. And it also reconnected him with that event and those beings. And that after this event, he has been able to have continued connections with orbs and different various phenomenon that he welcomed. If there's any questions at this point before I go on, Kathy, or should I continue?
I'm loving this, and I'm benefiting a lot because I saw Darren's presentation, and I didn't quite. It just was a slide that went through. I didn't really get how much work there was for you to recreate that. And I didn't get the full story, really. Interesting, because I was at the Avalon with you guys when he presented, and he used those slides, so this is wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I really wanted to sort of explain a little bit about the technical nature as working as a forensic artist and what goes into it. So that was my reasoning for going into that detail. Well, and I just thought it was pretty amazing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just still want to reinforce how healing this has been for everyone that you've worked with. I mean, not only your art, but this forensic art that you do, and I'm sure the portraits that you do bring out the best, the most beautiful version of the person. So you really are holding space for people to realize who they are.
Thank you. Well, I think the reason why I think this is important to talk about the whole UFO experience thing is that we've been living for so many years. So many millions of people have had these experiences, and they've had kind of cognitive dissonance about it because, especially if you're in this country, you've been treated as if you're crazy for so long because of the government's denial protocol that they put in place.
Right.
So now is the time. It's so important with disclosure and everything else that people realize that they're safe to go into that memory, and that those memories are needed to be shared, because there are so many people that are grappling with this phenomenon and have been sort of brainwashed to believe that they can't talk about it, or it just didn't really happen, or whatever it is. And I just feel it's really important as a civilization for us to open our minds to this, because it's here whether we want it to be or not.
Yeah. Well, it's spiritually expansive. I
Right.
mean, the whole experience of seeing that there's so much more than what you read in your history books, and so much more available to us as beings,
Right.
and we're co-creating this as an environment. So it's a plus 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 as far as I can see. And I just want to acknowledge your path, because what you did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, of doing the forensic work had to be really hard to do, as sensitive as you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
This will be interesting for everyone, because this is one of your UFO experiences, and for the people that want to know more about Cynthia, she is in New York now. She was in Colorado for a while, and the fun part is that I think there's more experiences for her going to happen back in New York. Anyway, so why don't we go ahead and
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
I'll back off again.
Okay. Let me just see here. So it just occurred to me in putting this together. I've talked about my UFO experiences and the art that I do that's related to that, and the symbols that I mentioned. I've talked about that quite a bit, and this is this part of the presentation I've given before. But it just occurred to me in putting this one together that really what I've done with what I'm telling you now about myself is also create a forensic documentation of my own experiences, which it took me my whole life to get to be able to be brave enough, or to be able to, I'm not even sure, it's hard to express and to go into those memories sometimes, but or be brave enough not to be judged and all of that kind of stuff. But anyway, this is my forensic documentation of what happened to me. So I grew up in the Hudson Valley of New York, and was living there when this event took place. This was about 1973, I want to say. And this is a little map of my neighborhood. The red marker marks where I lived, and the yellow dot marks where this event took place. And so what happened was, it was a summer day. It was a blue sky, beautiful day. And my best friend and I were walking around the neighborhood and just looking for something to do. And we came upon this road in our neighborhood. Now, this is a modern day, this is a Google Maps image. This is not the way it looked. I believe at the time it was just a dirt road. And there was a no trespassing sign. And we were aware of the fact that, of course, we're not supposed to be there. It's no trespassing. We'd never been there before. It was where the water treatment plant was. But we were bored, and we decided to go down this road. So we did. And we went to the end of the road, and it's just a wooded, secluded area. A lot of woodland was there. If I go back, you can see where the yellow dot is. That's a modern day Google image of it. So it's still undeveloped. So we were in a suburban neighborhood, but we found ourselves down that little dirt road to an area that was pretty undeveloped. Okay, very wooded and secluded. And as we're standing there at the end of this road, I hear this humming noise, and I'm trying to understand where this sound is coming from. And I look over towards the water treatment plant that we have come upon, and I'm noticing the turning around of the water treatment, and realize that no, that sound is not coming from there. The sound was coming, in fact, from above us. And so I look above us, and I see this silver, seamless craft that was hovering above us. Now, this angle that I created is it was a little bit higher up and above us, but it was that low. It was pretty low down. It was very close. And so my friend and I had different experiences, which actually this summer I just had a conversation with her about this event and realized that what she saw was she saw a light in the sky coming towards us. I didn't see that. She saw a light in the sky coming toward us. She got afraid and she ran away. I looked at the water treatment plant, trying to figure out the humming noise, saw this craft in front of us, above us and in front of us, and I was mesmerized by it. It just was something I couldn't wrap my brain around. What was it? I was trying to figure it out. Is it, my mind is going through all different scenarios. I'm noticing that there's no seams, there's no rivets, there's no screws. The surface of it almost looked like dolphin skin, or just so smooth but silver, metallic. And it was at, I don't know how long I was there observing this object, but I at one point looked towards my friend and noticed that she was gone. She was totally gone, at the end of the road, running home. And it was in that moment that I felt terror and fear. And then I also ran home, and she ran to her house and I ran to my house. And we continued to be best friends until I went off to college. And we never talked about this, which is really odd. And we never told our parents. We never told anybody about this having had happened. And it was 10 years after that in the Hudson Valley that the very famous Hudson Valley sightings began happening, and there's been movies written about it and whatnot. But getting back to that period of time, so I was about 14 years old when this event happened, and I began having memories or dreams. And one of them was that I was sitting in a white room, which in my mind could be like what somebody would imagine the inside of a UFO to be: rounded, very clean, white space. And I was seeing myself sitting on a bench in front of a large wall that had a projection on it. And these projections were like movies, fast, like slideshows of images. And it was showing images of the planet. And it began showing beautiful images of the planet, of sunsets, of waterfalls, of the ocean. And then the images that began flashing in front were images that were more destructive, more images of bombs going off and tidal waves and fires. And it gave me the sense, the message in that, nonverbal message in that for me, but a deep inner knowing, was that I was going to be living on this planet during the time when these events were going to happen. And I feel that we're living during that time right now, where there's going to be earth changes, where there's going to be a lot of conflict, and we're going to be here to witness some sort of, not just cataclysmic events, but some sort of turning point. And I also during the same time, had a very strong dream that has stuck with me for my whole life, of seeing an orange sky, which was very odd to see an orange sky because I'd never seen an orange sky before. And that didn't really make sense to me until years ago when I was living in Colorado, when the California fires the smoke from the fires had come to Colorado, and that's exactly what the sky looked like in Colorado. But anyway, in this dream, I saw a grid of UFOs that were just very slowly moving towards me. And I got the sense there was no fear. I got the sense that my role was to keep people calm, and that this was going to be a good thing, not a bad thing. Yes, so 10 years after my sighting, in 1983 through 1986. There were over 5,000 people, I think, or 500 people that were witnesses to the large silent craft in the Hudson Valley, the same area that I grew up in. So I mentioned my symbol dreams. And so these symbol dreams began in about 2012 when I also began working as a forensic artist, which I find to be interesting now and looking back. And as I said, there were these symbols that would come to me in dreams, and I didn't document them at the time. But then I came to a point in 2020, 2019, 2020, when I felt like I needed to really document them, that they were important, that it was time. I would have people go do plant medicine journeys and come back to me and say, I don't know what this means, but they told me you have to do something with symbols in your art now. So the promptings were coming from within myself and from people that didn't really even know anything about these. And so I began to sit down after feeling like I got permission from one of my friends who just encouraged me by saying, Cynthia, it's all inside you. You just have to sit down and get your mind out of the way and begin. And so that's what I did. And I just sat down and I just started writing, doing all this automatic writing that I couldn't stop doing. And in so doing and showing up to start documenting these symbols, the dreams came back. And so since the dreams came back, and since I was in this process of being more interested in documenting, I would stop the dream, memorize some symbols in the dream, stop the dream, write them down, go back to sleep, let the dream resume. And then from that, the dreams began changing and more, I'll call it information because it felt like information started to come through. And I started having dreams of these geometries and symbols and layers of both, as if the symbols and then the layers of geometries that were coming were layers of different information, and which of course I didn't understand. And what I do understand about it now is that there's something about sacred geometry that I believe unlocks memories in people. And I don't know, I've just witnessed so many people having some kind of connection to the work that I've been doing in a way that they remember dreams, or they remember who they are or what they're meant to be doing. Oops. So I began just showing up in the morning. I'd have these dreams, I'd show up in the morning, and I very much like doing a forensic sketch. Hold on. Very much like doing a forensic sketch, I would put my judgment out of the way, and I would sit down and I would just begin to draw and not think at all about what I was drawing, not judge what I was drawing, just draw and allow the creative side of my brain to just take over. And it felt very guided. I'm getting a recording error, Kathy. Is that something I should be worried about?
It's fine here.
Okay. Anyway, so these are just representative of the beginnings of what I was doing. I was just doing them on paper, so I didn't feel like it was a big production on canvas. I could, if I didn't like them, I could throw them away, or I could start over, whatever. So there was a freedom to that. And I'm just going to go quickly through these. Again, so now there's some color that's being introduced. There's color in the dreams that I was seeing. So I was just trying to document these dreams as best as I could. This one is an example of layers. The feeling that there's this information that's embedded in the sacred geometry with the symbols. This was a surprising one to me. I was having a dream of, and in the next slide, I'll show you the full image, but I wanted to point out the eyes in this one. So I was observing this sacred geometry form in my dream, and the background is dark black, like space, and I'm seeing these geometries come and these lines zipping across with different colors in them and whatnot. And then at the end of it, these eyes just come out of the darkness. And it really surprised me. I wasn't expecting to see that. And it made me feel like, who's watching who? Like, what do the eyes represent? Is it consciousness? Is it who's watching the watcher? I just found that one too. I was very excited to be able to do that one because it was so different than all the rest of them, with the eyes showing up in this one. And then I graduated onto different color backgrounds. So the first section that I showed you was all on black paper. The dreams of the geometries that I got were luminous. They were luminescent, and so I was trying to more and more capture that. And then I began realizing this one is not the exact one that I did. I should have included it in here, but it's not in here for sense of time. But I started to realize that in doing these sacred geometries and showing up to do them, it was shifting my energy. By the time I was done doing one of these, I felt such a sense of joy. The drawings that I would work on until I felt a sense of that they were sort of activated, if that makes any sense. There was an energy that I felt that I could feel. I felt, just very joyous. And I realized that instead of just sort of mindlessly doing these things, that I could do them mindfully and use and create every line, draw every line with an intention. And so I began using these and doing these with specific intentions, embedding a heart-centered energy in each line. And some of them one is titled Prayer. I focused on somebody that was sick and spent the entire, many hours that I was working on it, working with my intuition and what it was that I was creating, but also being really mindful about embedding a certain energy of healing and love and prayerfulness. Then I went to Hawaii, and these paintings reflect some experiences that I had there with orbs that I witnessed above the water, underneath the water. I had a very, very powerful experience with swimming in a bay that dolphins rest in. And this one here I did right after coming out of the water, going back to where I was staying. And that captures that amazing energy of the water, the sea, the ocean, that whole world. This I did on another trip to Hawaii, where I did a workshop there, and this is titled 12 Strand. This was I began this during the workshop that I taught there on sacred geometry. And this is a 64 tetrahedron. And I had a dream about these cathedral-like shapes that were hovering over this body of water. And they were so incredibly beautiful and profound. And they were like the shape of a cathedral. They were 5-dimensional. They were crystalline. They were blue and green and very dimensional. And they were just the most beautiful thing. And this doesn't even come close to capturing it, but I realized that geometry, and here again is the same 64 tetrahedron, is kind of close to what I dreamt about. This one is titled Where Two or More Gather. And it's a contemplation on what we are doing as a spiritual community together, is we come together, and when we come together and bring our energies together for the good, raising frequency, there's this other energy that meets us, Christ consciousness or whatever it is that you want to call it, and helps to activate us even further. And so I feel real strongly about this is the time now. I was saying to somebody the other day, the time of the lone wolf is over. We've all been given incredible opportunities with teachers, spiritual teaching and whatnot, to develop spiritually. And now is the time to put ourselves out there and uplift each other and help each other. And if you have things to teach them. And get out of your lone wolf, I'm just going to stay in my house and meditate by myself in the cave. Like, that time is over. This was a mural that I did at a place called ISD, in Oneonta, Institute for Spiritual Development. And I also had a show there and did a talk there last spring, I think. Time is so weird. Anyway, I was very grateful to be able to do a huge geometry on a wall, and it really holds a lot of beautiful energy. And this was a painting that I did that I wanted to capture that's similar to that mural. That actually this painting is available if anybody's interested. I also have workbooks. If anybody's interested in workbooks, please reach out. A lot of people have asked me how to do this kind of work. I had to figure it out. I just couldn't find books that really were great step-by-step manuals of how to do the basic geometries that I was being shown. So if anybody's interested, I have workbooks. They're $20 or $25 for shipping. And I teach workshops. So would love to hear from anybody interested in workshops or art or forensic documentation of their memories. Please contact me. And I really appreciate the time, Kathy, being on your show. And I'll leave it back on here in case anybody wants to screenshot that.
Sure. Well, I want to let people know again, I have 3 of your art pieces hanging in this room. And the energy that they afford is quite palpable. So, okay, so somebody wrote, thank you, Cynthia. There's always something new in your presentation that deeply resonates. Thank you for the important message you bring through your art. And Darren did come. He didn't remember that it was me. Here's a link to, so he's in the comments. There's a link to his presentation where he used the beautiful art that Cynthia shared. So, but I do think that this is the time for all of us to wake up to our remembering of who we are and what our gifts are. And your work is definitely a piece of that puzzle. It has been for me. My recognition of your work with Ricardo Gonzalez, I had a huge experience in Crestone with
Mhm.
his work. And then to see it in your art,
Yeah.
it just went. So when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Did you notice that I showed a drawing here that I did during his conference?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I found that YouTube also of the time. He has that sequence of sacred geometry of fourth dimension and out of time and space.
Mhm.
So I recognized it in your work.
Okay.
So it's sort of like these seeds are planted throughout your life, and sometimes water hits them and they sprout, and
Yeah.
sometimes they stay buried. So hopefully people will be activated by what you've shared. And again, yeah, I did uh, um, tag a whole bunch of people that may be interested in your work in the comments. So hopefully it will bring a lot more people to you because your work deserves to get out there. It's just absolutely magnificent.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you so much. So
Well,
once again, just want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you real quick, and then we'll end the stream.
well, you can get a hold of me on my website. It's cynthiamarsh.com. My email is cmarshstudio@gmail.com.
Okay.
And I would love to hear from you. I'm also on Instagram. It's cmarshstudio.
And you'll be able, if you go to those sites, you'll be able to see so much of Cynthia's art, and you'll know if you're supposed to gift yourself some of it because it's a gateway
Mhm.
to remembering. So thank you, Cynthia. Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.
Happy New Year. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kathy.
Sure, my pleasure. Always fun. Thank you, dear. Bye-bye.
Bye.